and welcome back to Penplexity, the podcast where we get, well, perplexed by books. I'm your host, James, and as always, I am joined by the two people I'd happily share my data with. Maybe. The wonderfully sharp and always insightful Sarah.
Hey, James. Happy to be here. And, I don't know, my data's pretty valuable. You'd have to earn it.
Fair enough. And the man who probably already has my data because he's just that smart, our resident witty scientist, Ethan.
The premise that I would want your data is flawed, James. My algorithms are far too sophisticated to be interested in your search history for, quote, sloths wearing hats. But hello.
Okay, that's a hurtful and very specific hypothetical search. Anyway, today we are diving into a book that is, let's say, a little bit terrifying. It's the introduction to Privacy is Power by Carissa Veliz, and it opens with the line, "They are watching us." So, no pressure, everyone.
Right? It just jumps straight in. No gentle easing into the paranoia, just boom. They know you're reading this. And honestly, it's so effective because it's true. That's the core of this whole introduction. This isn't science fiction. She calls it the surveillance society, or surveillance capitalism. The entire internet, pretty much, is funded by watching us.
I think surveillance capitalism is a very precise term. It's not just surveillance for state control, which is what we traditionally think of. It's a specific economic model. The book says our lives, translated into data, are the raw material. We aren't the customers anymore. We're the product. Or, more accurately, we're the natural resource being mined.
The resource being mined, that's a heavy way to put it. And she makes this point that even us finding her book is probably because we were tracked. She mentions being tagged as a pioneer or an advocate. I felt so seen when I read that. I was like, oh, they know I like books that make me think. How nice. And then immediately, oh no, they know I like books that make me think.
Exactly. That's the trap. It feels personalized and helpful, but as she says, most similar uses of your data will disempower you. It's a calculated move. And the examples she gives are just wild. If you're reading on a Kindle, they're timing you. If you bought it in a bookshop, your phone tracked you, and the music in the store might have been sending ultrasound beacons to your phone. That is just so sneaky.
The ultrasound beacon technology, or U-beacons, is fascinating from a technical standpoint. It embeds high-frequency audio signals, inaudible to us, into ambient sounds. Your phone's microphone picks them up and can identify your precise location within a store, what aisle you're in, how long you linger. It connects your physical presence to your digital profile without you ever actively consenting to that specific form of tracking. It's the passive nature of it all that's key. The book says the surveillance architecture was already in place by the time we even noticed.
Okay, so my mind is officially blown. It feels like we walked into this digital world completely blind. The author says tech companies did not inform users of how our data was being used, much less ask for our permission. So this wasn't an agreement. It was just something that happened to us?
It totally was. It was a land grab for data. And now, everything is built on that foundation. She argues that this has huge consequences. Privacy isn't just about hiding embarrassing things. She says we need it to unwind, to explore new ideas freely, to be autonomous individuals. It's fundamental to a functioning democracy. If you can't have a private thought or conversation without it being recorded and analyzed, how can you ever form your own genuine opinion?
And that leads to her central thesis. Privacy is power. It's a zero-sum game in her view. If corporations have our data, they have the power. If the government has it, they have the power. She argues the only way for society to be free is if the people keep their data. It's a pretty radical stance, actually. It's not about better regulation of the data trade. It's about ending it. She calls personal data toxic, and the people collecting it data vultures.
Data vultures? I like that. It's very visual. But is it really that bad? I mean, I get personalized ads for things I actually want sometimes. There's a convenience factor, right?
Oh, for sure, that's the hook. But the book argues the trade-off is horrific. She lists the nefarious purposes: betraying secrets to insurance companies, employers, pitting us against each other, hijacking our democracies. It's not just about selling you a new pair of shoes. It's about predicting and influencing your behavior on a massive scale. It's social control for profit.
The danger isn't that they know you like blue shirts. The danger is in the aggregation. When they know your financial anxieties, your medical history, your political leanings, and your social circle, they can create a profile of your weaknesses. And that profile can be sold to anyone: a political campaign, an insurance company denying you coverage, a foreign state actor. The potential for misuse is almost limitless. The convenience of a good recommendation is, by comparison, trivial.
Wow. Okay, when you put it like that, it's a lot. This whole conversation is about taking back power and control, about being empowered to build your own future on your own terms. Which, speaking of empowerment, brings me to this week's sponsor. This episode of Penplexity is brought to you by Mages Institute in Singapore. Mages is a leading institution for creative media education, offering incredible industry-focused programs in things like game design, game art, and concept art. In a world where so much tech is used to, well, track us, Mages is all about empowering you to use technology for creativity, to build new worlds, and to forge your own career. They provide hands-on training from expert instructors to get you ready for a real career in these fields. We think it's a perfect fit for a discussion about reclaiming our power and shaping our future.
Yeah, that's a great point. So much of what we've been talking about is being a passive subject of technology. An education like the one Mages offers is about becoming an active creator. It's about grabbing the tools and building something yourself. I love that. If you're passionate about those fields, you should really check them out.
Indeed. To build a better digital future, we need people who are not only technically proficient, but also ethically and creatively educated. An institution focused on practical, career-oriented training like Mages is essential for fostering the next generation of creators who will, hopefully, build a more private and more human-centric digital space. Visit them at mages.edu.sg, that's mages.edu.s-g.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, we've got a few questions from our listeners. The first one is from Alex in London. Alex asks, this all sounds terrifying, but is it even possible to escape the surveillance, or is it basically too late? Sarah, what do you think?
That is the question, right? And Veliz is actually super optimistic, which I found surprising. The last line of the intro is literally, here's how. She says, we are not witnessing the death of privacy. This is only the beginning of the fight. So her whole book is basically a battle plan. She doesn't think it's too late at all, but she does think it will take real effort from us as individuals and as a society.
A battle plan. I like that. Okay, next question is from Skeptical Sam. Sam asks, I hear this a lot, but what's the actual real-world harm of a company knowing I like a certain brand of coffee? It feels a bit abstract. Ethan?
It's a failure of imagination to see no harm. The harm isn't in one data point, it's in the mosaic. Knowing you like a brand of coffee is innocuous. Knowing you buy it every day at 7:03 a.m. near a substance abuse clinic, that your heart rate spikes when you look at your credit card bill, and that you just searched for high-risk loans. That's a very different picture. As the book states, they want to know where we hurt. The harm is exploitation of your vulnerabilities, which you may not even know are visible.
Yikes. That's a chillingly clear answer. Okay, final question from Maria in Miami. The author mentions the coronavirus pandemic made things worse. How so?
Oh, she touches on this briefly, but it's a huge point. Basically, the pandemic pushed so much of our lives online that were previously offline. Think about it. Work meetings, doctor's appointments, family gatherings, all suddenly happening on platforms that track and record us. And at the same time, she says, we have been asked to give up our personal data in the name of the public good. So we got normalized to even more tracking, like with contact tracing apps and health passes. It just rapidly accelerated the trends that were already there.
That makes so much sense. It really greased the wheels for more surveillance. Okay, that's all the time we have for questions. To wrap us up, Ethan, could you give us the key takeaways from this introduction?
Certainly. First, ubiquitous surveillance by corporations and governments is not a future threat. It is the current reality and the dominant business model of the internet. Second, this system, surveillance capitalism, was established without our informed consent. Third, privacy is not secrecy. It is a fundamental requirement for individual autonomy, creativity, and a functioning democracy. Therefore, privacy is power. And finally, the author's central argument, To restore power to the people and safeguard our freedom, we must end the trade in personal data entirely. The book is not a eulogy for privacy, but a call to arms.
A call to arms. Powerful stuff. Well, that is all we have time for on Penplexity today. A huge thank you to Sarah and Ethan. What a conversation.
Thanks, James. This was fun and slightly terrifying.
A necessary terror.
Indeed. We want to know what you want us to get perplexed by next. Let us know what books or chapters we should tackle. Follow us on all the socials at Penplexity and visit our website at penplexity.com for show notes and more. Until next time, stay curious and maybe turn off your location services. Bye for now. Hello and welcome back to Penplexity, the podcast where we get tangled up in the most fascinating ideas from the world of books. I'm your host, James, and as always, I am flanked by my two favorite people to get perplexed with.
That's me, Sarah. Ready to dive in.
And I'm Ethan, ready to overthink it.
Fantastic. Today, we are cracking open a book that, I gotta say, made me want to throw my phone into a lake. It's Privacy is Power by Carissa Veliz, and we're tackling Chapter 1, ominously titled Data Vultures.
Ooh, I love the drama. It sets the scene perfectly.
It really does. The chapter starts by basically describing my exact morning. And probably yours too. What's the first thing you do when you wake up?
Ugh, I check my phone. I know, it's terrible.
Right? And Veliz says, voila, that is the first data point you lose in the day. Just by picking it up, you're telling your phone manufacturer, your apps, your mobile company, who knows who else, what time you wake up and where you slept.
And critically, who you slept with, assuming they also have a phone nearby. It's proximity data. Two devices co-located from, say, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. on a regular basis. It's not a difficult inference to make.
And that's before you're even properly awake. The book mentions if you wear a smartwatch, it's been tracking your every movement all night. And she explicitly says, this includes any, sexual activity.
Wait, what? My Fitbit knows? Oh, this is already too much. And the book raises a great point. What if your boss gave you that watch for a wellness program?
Exactly. The employer remains the legal owner of that device. They can access the data. So, yeah, your boss could, theoretically, check in on your nightly activities. It's unsettling.
The legal framework around employer-provided devices is a massive gray area that heavily favors the employer. The device is their property. The data generated on their property? It's a legal minefield, but possession is 9/10 of the law, and they possess the device.
Okay, so my day is already an open book. Then I go to the kitchen, I need sugar for my coffee, but I'm out. I go to my neighbor's house, and she's got a smart doorbell, a Ring doorbell.
And this part is wild. The book says Ring employees, as in actual people, might review that footage of you standing there awkwardly asking for sugar. They do it to train their AI, but still, a human is watching you.
It's a classic case of human-in-the-loop machine learning. To get an AI to recognize a person at the door, you first need thousands of humans to label millions of images with person at the door. But what's really alarming is that the book states the videos are stored unencrypted. That's not just a privacy issue, it's a basic security failure. It's like leaving the key under the mat.
So a stranger is watching me, and a hacker could be watching the stranger watch me. Great. Then I'm back in my house, watching my guilty pleasure TV show, and my spouse calls and asks why I'm still home. How does he know?
The smart meter? Your electricity usage. It's so precise it can tell when you're home, when you're away. The book even says it can reveal which TV channel you're watching based on the specific energy footprint of the broadcast.
No way. That feels like science fiction.
It's not, though. It's called non-intrusive load monitoring. Different devices, and even different TV channels have unique, subtle power consumption signatures. With a high-resolution smart meter and the right algorithm, you can disaggregate the total power draw back into its component parts. It's just a data analysis problem.
And while this is all happening, your son comes in to have a sensitive talk with you, maybe about bullying or something personal. But the TV is still on, just muted. And your smart TV, according to the book, is listening. Samsung's own privacy policy warned that, quote, personal or other sensitive information, that information will be among the data captured and transmitted to a third party.
That is horrifying. A heart-to-heart with your child is being broadcast to a third party? For what? To sell me a self-help book?
Potentially, or for data analysis, market research. The purpose is secondary to the capability. The core issue is that the capability exists at all, often without meaningful consent. The book also mentions the CIA's Weeping Angel tool, which could make a Samsung TV look like it was off when it was actually recording. So you don't even have the reassurance of an off button.
And then it gets worse. Alexa mishears a word, thinks you asked it to send a message, and it records that private conversation with your son and emails it to a random person in your contacts. This is a real story from the book about a family in Portland.
I would smash it against the wall. Which is exactly what the person in the book's narrative does. I feel seen. Okay, this is all just inside the house. What about when you leave?
Well, your car is spying on you. It's gathering data on where you go, how fast you drive, your music taste, even your weight from the seat sensor. And if you bought it secondhand, the previous owner might still be connected to the car's app and have access to your location.
And then you have IMSI catchers. These are the fake cell phone towers the book mentions police use at protests in London. They trick your phone into connecting, then vacuum up your identification and location data. It's a dragnet.
And it's not just the government. The chapter says anyone can build or buy one. That's terrifying. Suddenly I'm feeling very good about all the tech that... Actually, wait. This is a perfect time to talk about the people who build all this stuff. Speaking of creating the very digital worlds we're navigating, or trying to, we want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Mages Institute in Singapore. They're a leading school for creative media education, offering programs in things like game design, game art, and concept art.
Oh, that's really cool. I mean, after reading this chapter, it really drives home how important it is for the people designing our future tech and media to be thinking about these things. We need ethical, thoughtful creators.
Absolutely. The people who build the games, the apps, the interfaces, they're the architects of this new world. Mages Institute provides that hands-on, industry-focused training that can empower someone to not just get a job, but to shape the industry for the better. If you're passionate about these fields, it sounds like a fantastic place to start.
Totally. They're all about preparing students for real careers. So if you've ever wanted to break into those industries or just level up your skills, check them out. The website is mages.edu.sg. That's mages.edu.sg. Go have a look. All right, we're back. And let's talk about the big one. The digital gangster itself. Facebook.
Yeah, Veliz pulls no punches here. She points out that they track everything, from your mouse movements to stuff you type and then delete. It's called self-censorship tracking.
They know what I was going to say but decided against? That feels more intimate than knowing what I actually said.
It's a powerful data point for sentiment analysis. It reveals your impulses versus your considered persona. But the people you may know feature is where it gets truly problematic. The book gives examples of it outing sex workers to their clients, or linking all of a psychiatrist's patients together, completely destroying confidentiality.
Right, and it's not just your activity on Facebook. They have shadow profiles. Even if you've never signed up, they collect data on you from your friends' contact uploads and from those little like and share buttons all over the internet. You don't even have to click them. Just loading the page sends data back to Facebook.
I feel so sticky, like I've been walking through invisible spiderwebs all day. And then there's the whole idea of anonymized data, which the book just completely debunks.
It really does. She brings up the classic LaTanya Sweeney example. Sweeney proved that 87% of Americans could be identified just from their zip code, birth date, and gender. That's it. That data is supposedly anonymous, but it's not.
And location data is even more powerful. Another study the book cites found that just 4 spatiotemporal points, 4 locations at 4 different times, were enough to uniquely identify 95% of people in a dataset of 1.5 million. Your daily path is as unique as your fingerprint.
So when a company says, we sell anonymized data, they're, what, lying?
It's a technically true but deeply misleading statement. They've removed your name, but they've left a trail of breadcrumbs that leads directly and uniquely back to you. The, quote, anonymity is trivial to reverse.
And these data brokers, these vultures, They package this stuff up. The book mentions they sell lists of rape victims, people with AIDS, people trying to lose weight. They look for vulnerabilities to exploit for profit.
That's pure evil. There's no other word for it. Okay, we've had a few questions come in from listeners that I think really get to the heart of this. The first one is from Alex in Ohio. Alex asks, "This is all very scary, but honestly, I don't have anything to hide. So should I really care?" Sarah?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The book argues that it's not about having something to hide. It's about autonomy and the right to a private life. The chapter makes a brilliant point. As a citizen in the surveillance economy, you're treated worse than a criminal suspect. A suspect has the right to remain silent. You don't. Your data is collected regardless. A suspect is warned that anything they say can be used against them. You're not. It's about not wanting strangers to know your fears, your weaknesses, your medical conditions, or your relationship troubles, just so they can sell you a divorce lawyer ad when you're at your lowest point, which is another story from the book.
Wow, that's a powerful way to frame it. Okay, next question is from Chloe in London. After reading this, what is the one device or service you would get rid of first? Ethan, you take this one.
For me, it would be any smart speaker, your Alexa, your Google Home. And here's why. A smart TV, a phone, a car, they have primary functions other than listening. But a smart speaker's primary function is to listen. It's an always-on microphone that you are willingly placing in the most private spaces of your home. The potential for error, misuse, and surveillance, as the book details with the Portland story, is just baked into its very design. The risk-to-convenience ratio is, for me, completely unbalanced.
Duly noted. My Echo is looking very nervous right now. Final question is from Sam in Toronto, who asks, "The chapter mentions our data can affect us even after we die. Can you explain that a bit more?"
Yeah, that's the final chilling thought. Your data trail doesn't die with you, it lives on in databases. This creates a post-mortem reputation. Imagine future historians, or even just your own great-grandkids, analyzing this data. But more immediately, your genetic data, which the book talks about with those DNA kids, absolutely affects your children and grandchildren. Your data can be used to make predictions or judgments about them long after you're gone. The vultures don't stop when you do.
Chilling is the right word. Okay, before we wrap this up, this was a lot. Ethan, can you try and boil this down for us? What are the key takeaways from data vultures?
Sure, I think there are three main takeaways. First, the scale of data collection is pervasive and nearly invisible, woven into every single aspect of modern life, from the moment you wake up to long after you're dead. Second, the concept of, quote, anonymous data is largely a myth. Re-identification is not just possible, but often trivial, meaning your personal, sensitive data is never truly safe once it's out there. And third, the driving force behind this entire ecosystem is the exploitation of vulnerability. These systems are designed to find our pressure points, our health, our relationships, our insecurities, because that's where the most profit is. It's predatory by design.
Predatory by design. That's going to stick with me. Phew, thank you both so much. This was incredibly eye-opening and, frankly, terrifying. But knowledge is power, right?
Right. Now we can start doing something about it.
Exactly. And that's all the time we have for today on Penplexity. What book or big idea should we get perplexed by next? Let us know. You can find us on all the socials at Penplexity or visit our website at penplexity.com. Until next time, stay curious. What is up, Penplexity people, and welcome back to the show where we get tangled up in the best ideas from the world's most perplexing books. I'm your host, James, and as always, I am joined by the two people who make my brain do cartwheels. First, the wonderfully relatable and sharp as a tack subject expert, Sarah.
Hello, hello. So ready to dive in.
And the man who can find the universal constant in a cup of coffee, our resident witty scientist, Ethan.
My coffee is less a constant and more a variable approaching infinity. Good to be here.
Always. Okay, so today we are jumping into Chapter 2 of Carissa Veliz's Privacy is Power. The chapter is called How Did We Get Here? And wow, it is a ride. It basically unpacks the unholy trinity that led us to this surveillance palooza we live in now. So, Sarah, where do we even begin with this? This origin story of our data doom.
Right? It's like a superhero villain origin story. Veliz breaks it down into three main things. 1. Someone figured out our data was basically digital gold. 2. The 9/11 attacks. And 3. This weird pushed idea that privacy is, like, totally uncool and outdated. But the first one, the money part, is all about Google.
Oh, I remember early Google. It was so clean. It was just a white page and a box. It felt academic, pure even.
Exactly. And it was. The book explains that Page and Brin's big idea, PageRank, was modeled on academic citations. The more important papers get cited by other important papers, right? So they applied that to the web. The more authoritative sites that link to you, the higher you rank. It was genius at organizing the absolute chaos of the early internet.
It's an elegant solution from a network theory perspective. They weren't just counting links, they were weighting them. It's the difference between a random person saying your restaurant is good versus Gordon Ramsay saying it. The authority of the source matters. But, and this is the key, their initial problem wasn't technical. It was financial. They were brilliant, and they were broke.
Wait, so they were trying to sell Google? To Yahoo?
Yep, to Excite, Alta Vista, Yahoo. Nobody was buying. The book says their investors were getting super impatient. One even joked his investment only got him the world's most expensive t-shirt. They were desperate. And that desperation is what turned data exhaust into gold dust.
Data exhaust. I love that term. It's like the little puffs of smoke our digital cars leave behind.
An apt metaphor. And for a long time, that exhaust was just exhaust. It was used maybe to improve the engine, to make the search results better for the user. The catastrophic shift happened when they realized they could capture that exhaust, refine it, and sell it to someone else entirely.
And that someone else was advertisers. This is the big twist. The book points out that Brin and Page actually wrote a paper in 1998 saying that ad-funded search engines would be, quote, inherently biased towards the advertisers and away from the needs of the consumers. They were against it. They knew it was a corrupting influence.
Whoa. So they basically went against their own founding principles because they needed to make money? That's a story as old as time, I guess.
Pretty much. And it worked. The book lays out the numbers, and they're insane. They went from like $86 million in revenue in 2001 to $3.2 billion by 2004. A 3,590% increase. And just like that, surveillance capitalism was born. We, the users, stopped being the customer. We became the product being sold to the real customers, the advertisers.
And the system for selling us was also clever. Initially, it wasn't just about who paid the most. Ads that got more clicks got prioritized. But then they started auctioning clicks. It created a black box where advertisers had to trust Google's numbers. But it also incentivized Google to learn more and more about us to make the ads more clickable.
So every time I searched for something weird at 3 a.m., like, can penguins fly? Google wasn't just answering my question. It was taking a little note. James, curious about flightless birds, potential travel to cold climates, probably sleep-deprived.
Exactly. The book talks about this display they had at Google called Live Query, which was just a live feed of searches from around the world. A reporter called it watching the collective consciousness of the world stream by. And then they patented technology to not just use the data we give them, but to infer things about us we don't voluntarily provide. It's a lot.
Okay, that is deeply creepy. But the book says this wasn't inevitable. It almost got stopped, right? Which brings us to the second element. Marissa.
Yeah, disaster strikes. In the late 90s, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission in the U.S., was getting really worried about cookies and data collection. They were actually pushing for legislation in 2000 that would have required websites to tell us what they were collecting and give us a choice. It was so close.
And then 9/11 happened. The paradigm shifted overnight from privacy concerns to a singular focus on security. The mandate became, quote, never again at any cost. And the cost, it turned out, was privacy. Any momentum for regulation just evaporated.
So the government, instead of regulating this data collection, suddenly saw it as a treasure trove.
A massive one. The book is chilling here. It talks about how intelligence agencies basically saw an opportunity. If corporations are collecting all this data, the government can just get a copy. So they let the data economy run wild because it served their own surveillance goals. We got the Patriot Act, secret courts, secret laws, programs like PRISM, which just vacuumed up data from Google, Facebook, Microsoft, everyone.
And the great irony, which Veliz points out so clearly, is that it didn't even work. The idea of finding a terrorist, a needle in a haystack, by adding more hay to the stack, is fundamentally flawed from an information theory standpoint. You're increasing the noise far more than the signal. An FBI official's feedback to the NSA on the leads they were getting was literally, "You're sending us garbage."
So we gave up all this privacy for garbage leads. That's infuriating.
It is! And it created this public-private surveillance monster. The book uses Palantir as the perfect example, a company funded by the CIA, designed with intelligence agencies to make sense of all this data they were hoovering up. It shows you can't just fight corporate surveillance or government surveillance. They're in it together.
Which leads to a very modern legal loophole. A court rules the government can't get your location data from a cell company without a warrant. So what does the government do? It just buys the same data from a private data broker, no warrant needed. They've effectively outsourced their surveillance to bypass the justice system.
That is, wow. It feels like we're building the perfect machine for control, and we're all just feeding it data for free. Which I guess is a good time to talk about something creative you can build. This episode of Penplexity is brought to you by Mages Institute in Singapore. You know, as we talk about how companies like Google creatively engineered these complex systems to, well, surveil us, it's a reminder of the sheer power of design and technology. Mages Institute channels that kind of creative power for good, offering diploma and professional certificate programs in amazing fields like game design, game art, and concept art. If you're passionate about building worlds instead of data profiles, this is for you.
Absolutely. It's about using those skills for creation and entertainment. If you're listening to this and you have that creative spark, you should definitely check them out. It's a practical, hands-on way to get into these industries.
Indeed. The same principles of system design and user engagement that can be used for advertising can also be used to create compelling narratives and art. It's a question of application. Mages seems focused on a very positive application. Their website is mages.edu.sg.
That's mages.edu.sg. Go turn your creativity into a career. A huge thank you to Mages Institute for their support. All right, so that brings us to the third and final piece of this puzzle. The idea that privacy is lame, dead, a thing for old people.
Yeah, the forgetting what matters part. The book zeroes in on that famous Mark Zuckerberg quote from 2010, where he basically said privacy is no longer a, quote, social norm, which is just so rich, coming from a guy who, as the book points out, bought the 4 houses around his own house just to have more privacy.
It's a classic case of motivated reasoning. It's in the business interest of a company fueled by data to convince its users that giving up data is a natural, progressive evolution, when in reality, privacy norms are ancient and deeply ingrained. The author's example is perfect. Go peek over a toilet cubicle divider and see how outdated the social norm for privacy is.
Ha, please do not try that at home or anywhere, but it's a great point. So why do we fall for it? Why are we so forgetful about its importance?
Veliz compares it to public health. When a vaccine works, you don't see the horrible disease it prevented, so you can start to underestimate the importance of the vaccine. Privacy has protected us for so long, we've forgotten what its absence looks like. The digital world also removes all the physical cues. No one steals your digital diary. They just copy it. There's no empty space left behind, no tangible feeling of violation until it's too late.
It's a slow-acting poison, as she calls it. A terrorist attack is immediate, visceral. Data misuse is abstract. The consequences, being denied a loan, having your democracy manipulated, facing algorithmic bias, materialize much later. Our brains are not wired to respond to slow, abstract threats as strongly as we do to immediate, tangible ones.
A slow-acting poison. Man, that's a perfect summary. Okay, that was a heavy but super important chapter. We've actually got some questions from our listeners that tie into this perfectly. First one is from Dataless Dave on Twitter. Dave asks, is it even possible to opt out? Or are we just stuck in this system forever? Sarah?
Oof, That's the big question. The book argues that individual action, while good, isn't enough. It's a systemic problem that needs systemic, legislative solutions, like the ones the FTC was proposing back in 2000. So while you can use more private browsers or services, the real fight is for regulation. But don't give up. Every small choice sends a market signal.
All right. Next question from Patriot Gamer 76. He asks, you mentioned the Patriot Act. Is that still a thing? I feel like I haven't heard about it in years.
A great question. Many parts of the Patriot Act have either expired, been reformed, or been replaced by other legislation, like the USA Freedom Act. However, the core infrastructure and philosophy of mass data collection it ushered in have become deeply embedded in intelligence operations. The specific law's name may change, but the capability and the public-private partnerships it fostered are very much still a thing.
Chillin'. Okay, last question. This is from Curious Cat via our website, Penplexity.com. The book mentions Palantir was named after the Seeing Stones in Lord of the Rings. What exactly do they see? And for whom? Ethan, that feels like one for you.
Tolkien would be horrified. Palantir essentially builds software that allows its clients, which are primarily government agencies like the CIA, FBI, and Department of Defense, but also large corporations, to analyze massive, disparate datasets. They see connections that a human analyst might miss. They find the needle in the garbage-filled haystack we mentioned earlier. Who they see for is their clients. It's a tool, and like any powerful tool, its application can be both beneficial and deeply concerning.
Wow, thank you both. That's all the time we have for questions. So to wrap this all up, Sarah, could you give us the key takeaways from this chapter? What are the one or two things we absolutely need to remember?
I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that our current privacy nightmare wasn't an accident. It was the result of a specific set of choices. First, the choice by a desperate company, Google, to turn its users into the product. And second, the choice by governments, post 9/11, to exploit that new reality for surveillance instead of regulating it. It's a public-private partnership that benefits the powerful at the expense of everyone else.
Perfectly put. The surveillance society wasn't inevitable. It was built. All right, that is a wrap for this episode of Penplexity. A huge thank you to Sarah and Ethan for breaking it all down.
Anytime.
A pleasure.
We want to hear from you. What book or topic should we get perplexed by next? Let us know on our socials. We are at Penplexity on everything, or drop a line on our website, penplexity.com. Until next time, stay curious and question everything, especially the free stuff. Hello, and welcome back to Penplexity, the show that gets tangled up in the best ideas from books so you don't have to. I'm your host, James, and as always, I am joined by the brilliant duo of Sarah and Ethan.
Hey everyone! So excited for today's topic.
Hello. Ready to have my worldview sufficiently complexified.
That's what we do here. Today, we are diving headfirst into a really meaty one. It's Chapter 3, Privacy is Power, from Carissa Veliz's book, Privacy is Power. And it starts with this incredible analogy, comparing your personal data to a master key for your entire life.
Right! It's such a perfect way to frame it. The book asks, you wouldn't just hand out copies of your house key, your diary key, your car key, all on one ring, to random strangers, would you? But we do that with our data every single day without a second thought.
And it's the key to everything. The book lists it all out. Your fears, your failures, the worst thing you've ever thought, that really drunken night you'd rather forget.
It's the key to your vulnerability. And the author makes a crucial distinction, right? Giving that key to someone who loves you is an act of intimacy. They use it to protect you, to plan a surprise party, to keep you safe. But in the hands of, well, almost everyone else?
Exactly. In the hands of a company or a criminal, that key is a weapon. They use your tastes to lure you into bad deals, your fears to blackmail you, your date of birth to impersonate you. The core message is stark. A lack of privacy gives other people power over you. Full stop.
This is where my brain always gets stuck, though. The classic, I have nothing to hide argument. I'm a pretty boring guy. Who cares what I search for or what I buy?
Oh, the book just demolishes that argument. It's so good. It basically says, you're wrong. You think you have nothing to hide? What about your passwords? You hide those, don't you? And don't sell yourself short. If you weren't important, why would these billion-dollar companies and governments be going to such incredible lengths to spy on you?
And it's not just about hiding things. It's about what you represent. You're a source of power. You have attention that apps want, money that companies want, an identity that criminals want, a vote that political actors want. You are a node in a network. Through you, they get to your friends, your family. You're not a nobody. You're a doorway.
A doorway. I don't like being a doorway. So when we talk about companies like Google or Facebook, we think they're selling our data, but the book says that's not quite right.
It's more subtle and, honestly, more sinister. They don't just sell a spreadsheet with your name on it. They sell the power to influence you. They sell predictions about what you'll do next. They're not in the data business. They are in the power business.
Which brings us to the philosophical core of the chapter, the definitions of power. The author breaks it down into two types. First, there's soft power, which she pulls from the philosopher Rainer Forst. It's the ability to get someone to think or do something they otherwise wouldn't. Think of a perfectly targeted ad or a YouTube algorithm leading you down a rabbit hole.
Okay, yeah, I know that rabbit hole well. What's the other kind?
Hard power. Based on Max Weber's work, this is the ability to carry out your own will despite resistance. And this is where the author makes a key point. Tech companies use both. Soft power is seducing you. Hard power is when they do it anyway, even when you say no.
Like that Google location history scandal. People turned off location history, thinking they were safe. But a separate, obscure setting called Web and App Activity was still tracking them. You said no, but they did it anyway. That's hard power. It's not tanks in the street, but it's a violation of your will.
Whoa. And all of this is built on a knowledge gap, right? A power asymmetry?
Precisely. The chapter brings in Foucault here. Power and knowledge are intertwined. The more they know about you, and the less you know about them and what they know, the greater their power. They don't just use knowledge. Their power allows them to define what counts as knowledge about you. Your data profile, your consumer score, that becomes the truth about you in their system.
It's like they're building these little digital voodoo dolls of us, tinkering with them to see what makes us tick.
That is exactly what the book says. It calls them data clones or virtual avatars. And this isn't just theory. This is where the Cambridge Analytica story comes in. And it is absolutely chilling.
Okay, walk us through that again. I know the name, but the details are fuzzy.
So they created a personality quiz app. They paid about 270,000 people $1 or $2 to take it. But here's the kicker. The app didn't just scrape the user's data. It scraped all of their friends' data too, without their consent. That's how they got data on 87 million people.
And with that data, they built psychological profiles using the Big Five personality traits. They could identify people who were neurotic, or susceptible to conspiracy theories, or prone to anger. Then they targeted those people with personalized, manipulative, and often fake content designed to push their buttons and influence their vote in elections like the 2016 US election and Brexit.
It's psychological warfare. And it worked because it was invisible. People didn't see it as propaganda. They saw a news article shared by a friend, or a post from a group that seemed to represent people just like them. But it was all orchestrated.
That's terrifying, because it breaks our shared reality. If you and I are seeing completely different information about the same candidate, we can't have a rational conversation. We just think the other person is crazy.
And that's the goal, to divide and conquer. It's an attack on our collective autonomy, our ability to self-govern as a society.
Wow. Okay. This manipulation of people through design and data is a huge theme. And speaking of the power of creative media, it's actually a perfect time to talk about our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Mages Institute in Singapore. The Cambridge Analytica story shows the dark side of using creative tools and data to build systems that manipulate. But it also highlights how powerful these skills are. Mages Institute is a leading institution for creative media education, offering programs in things like game design, game art, and concept art. They are all about giving students hands-on, practical training to build successful careers in these fields.
That's such a great point. Understanding how these systems are built is the first step to creating more ethical ones. If you're passionate about gaming or art, learning the ropes at a place like Mages could empower you to be part of the solution, not the problem.
It's about reclaiming the tools. Instead of using game mechanics to create addictive, mindless scrolling, you could learn to build genuinely enriching interactive experiences. It's a fascinating field. Definitely check them out.
Absolutely. If you're looking for a career-oriented education in creative media, visit their website at mages.edu.sg. That's mages.edu.sg. Our thanks to Mages Institute for their support. All right, we're back, and my head is still spinning from the idea that our own data is being used to undermine democracy itself. The book argues this is an attack on our autonomy.
Yes, autonomy is your ability to govern yourself, to live according to your own values. Privacy protects the mental and physical space you need to do that. Being watched all the time creates a, quote, chilling effect. The book mentions a study that after the Snowden revelations, Wikipedia searches for terms like terrorism dropped by 30%. People self-censored. They were scared.
And that brings us to what might be the single most important argument in the chapter. Privacy is not just personal, it's collective.
What does that mean exactly? It's my data, isn't it?
Well, no, not entirely. Think about a DNA test. You send in your saliva, you get a report. But your DNA contains vast amounts of information about your parents, your siblings, your children, even distant cousins. By giving up your genetic privacy, you're giving up theirs too, without their consent.
And your psychological profile is similar. If you and I share certain personality traits and you give away your data, analysts learn how to manipulate people with our shared traits. Your privacy slip makes me vulnerable. We are all interconnected.
That's why the book argues that treating data like private property that you can just sell is a huge mistake. You don't have the moral authority to sell it because it's not just yours.
That makes so much sense. We're all tied together in this invisible web. Okay, I think this is a perfect time for some questions from our listeners. First one is from Chuskin. Alex. Alex asks, I still kind of feel like I have nothing to hide. I'm a boring person. Why should I really truly care? Sarah, you want to take that?
I love this question because it's what everyone thinks. The answer is twofold. First, as the book says, you do have things to hide, like passwords, private conversations, moments of vulnerability. But more importantly, privacy isn't about hiding bad things. It's about protecting yourself from what powerful companies and governments might do with your information. It's about blinding power so it can't be used against you. And second, even if you, Alex, are fine with it, your data reveals things about your friends and family. It's a collective responsibility.
Great answer. Okay, next one is from Maya. The idea of tech's hard power is scary, but what does the soft power look like day to day? Is it just ads, Ethan?
Oh, it's so much more than ads. It's the infinite scroll on social media, designed to hook your brain's dopamine system. It's the loyalty card at the supermarket that nudges you to buy things you wouldn't normally. It's the YouTube algorithm that seduces you into watching one more video. Soft power is manipulative. It works by making you feel like your actions are your own choice, when really, your will is being recruited against your own best interests by an army of designers and data scientists.
Recruiting my will against me. That's a chilling phrase. Okay, last question. From Leo. If it's my data, why shouldn't I be able to sell it and make some money? The book argues against it, but isn't that my choice?
This ties back to the collective nature of privacy. It feels like it should be your choice, but it can't be. Because your data isn't just about you. Selling your location data might reveal the location of a sensitive political meeting. Selling your genetic data risks the privacy of your entire family tree for generations. Selling your psychological data helps companies build tools to manipulate everyone. It's like, you can't sell your vote, right? Because your vote is part of a collective system of democracy. Privacy is the same. It's a public good, not just a personal commodity.
Fantastic. That really clarifies it. Okay, before we wrap up, Sarah, could you give us the key takeaways? If our listeners remember just one thing from this chapter, what should it be?
The main takeaway is right in the title, Privacy as Power. It's not about hiding secrets. It's about protecting your autonomy and our collective freedom. When we give away our data, we are handing over power to corporations and governments, allowing them to predict, influence, and control us in ways we can't even see. Protecting privacy is a civic duty, essential for preserving equality, justice, and democracy itself. It's a collective fight, and we are all on the front lines.
The front lines. Wow, what a powerful note to end on. Thank you, Sarah and Ethan, for this. Slightly terrifying, but incredibly important conversation.
Anytime.
My pleasure.
That's all the time we have for today on Penplexity. What book or big idea should we get perplexed by next? Let us know. You can find us on all the socials at Penplexity or on our website at penplexity.com. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome back to Penplexity, the podcast where we get tangled up in the best ideas from the world of books. I'm your host, James, and with me, as always, are the dynamic duo of Deep Dives. We have the wonderfully sharp and relatable Sarah.
Hey. So ready to get into this one. It's a heavy hitter.
It really is. And balancing us out with his signature scientific wit, it's Ethan.
Greetings. Prepared to dissect the digital detritus of our lives.
Digital detritus. I love that. Okay, so today we are tackling Chapter 4, Toxic Data, from Carissa Veliz's Privacy is Power. And wow, she does not pull her punches. The chapter opens by comparing personal data to asbestos.
Yeah. And it's such a perfect arresting analogy, right? Because asbestos is useful. It's cheap, it's fire resistant, it's durable. That's why we put it everywhere. And personal data is the same. It's useful, it can be sold, it can predict the future, it makes our apps free. But, and this is the core of it, just like asbestos, it's also incredibly toxic. It can poison individual lives, our institutions, and, well, all of society.
And the toxicity isn't just a metaphor. It's a fundamental property of the asset itself. The security expert Bruce Schneier calls data a, quote, toxic asset, because storing it is like managing a ticking bomb. The more you collect, the bigger the eventual explosion. It's an interesting asymmetry in cyberspace. The attacker only needs to find one flaw, one time. The defender has to protect all flaws, all the time. The odds are, mathematically, not in your favor.
So the more data a company has on me, the more I should be worried, not impressed. Okay, so Sarah, poisoned lives. That's a strong phrase. What's a real-world example of this?
Oh, the book gives a doozy. Ashley Madison, remember that? The dating site for married people wanting to have affairs? In 2015, hackers dumped the entire customer database online. We're talking names, addresses, credit card numbers, sexual preferences, for over 30 million people.
Oh, I remember the headlines. But what actually happened to the people?
It was catastrophic. I mean, beyond the jokes, people lost their jobs. They were blackmailed by criminals who found their data. One newspaper in Alabama just straight up printed the names of everyone from the region. Marriages, families, just shattered. And the worst part is, some people committed suicide over it.
The obvious retort, which the book addresses, is, well, they were cheaters, they deserved it. But that's a dangerously simplistic view. Firstly, who appointed hackers as the arbiters of morality and punishment? And secondly, the data doesn't tell the whole story. Some users were on there with their spouse's consent, some had just signed up in a moment of weakness and never even used it. And even if you think the user deserved some consequence, did their spouse, did their children? They were publicly humiliated by association.
That's a really good point. The shrapnel from that data bomb hits everyone. But, okay, that's an extreme case. Most of us aren't on, affair websites.
Exactly. And that's the next point. You don't have to have dark secrets. The book talks about Ramona Maria Fagura, an ordinary woman whose identity was stolen. Someone used her details to commit fraud all over Spain. So for years, she's been dragged out of bed by police, arrested, spending thousands on lawyers, all to prove she's innocent. She's on anxiety medication. Her life was ruined, and she did absolutely nothing wrong.
This is the more common, insidious form of the poison. It's not about morality, it's about vulnerability. Your name, your address, your passport number, these are the keys to your administrative self. In the digital age, we've made these keys both more powerful and easier to copy, without upgrading the locks. The result is predictably chaotic.
It's chaotic for people, but what about the companies hoarding all this data? The book talks about poisoned institutions. Are they feeling the pain too?
Sometimes. Cambridge Analytica, the firm that used Facebook data to micro-target voters, they went bankrupt 2 months after the scandal broke. Google shut down its whole social network, Google+, after a data leak. So yeah, it can be a death sentence for a company.
But not always, and that's the fascinating part. Ashley Madison is apparently doing better than ever, and Facebook has survived so many data blunders, it's almost a case study in corporate resilience. The book argues, however, that the brand is tarnished. It's not cool anymore. People I know in tech used to brag about working at Facebook. Now they kind of mumble it. That kind of reputational rot can be a slow-acting poison. The fine, the $5 billion fine, is a more acute symptom.
$5 billion. Wow. You know, thinking about building better, more responsible digital platforms for the future makes me think about our sponsor. This episode of Penplexity is brought to you by the Mages Institute in Singapore.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Mages Institute is a leading institution for creative media education. They offer industry-focused diploma and certificate programs in things like game design, game art, concept art, basically all the cool stuff that builds the digital worlds we inhabit. They're all about hands-on training and strong industry connections to get you ready for a real career. If you're passionate about these fields and want a practical education to break in or level up your skills, you should really check them out.
That's awesome. You know, the people learning there are the ones who are going to build the next generation of apps and games, hopefully with a better understanding of this stuff than the last generation.
A solid foundation in both the creative and ethical technical aspects of design is crucial. It sounds like a valuable place. People should definitely look them up.
Absolutely. Visit them at mages.edu.sg. That's mages.edu.sg. Our huge thanks to Mages Institute for their support. Okay, so we've covered poisoned lives, poisoned institutions, but the chapter then goes even bigger. Poisoned societies. How does this toxic data threaten, like a whole country?
Okay, this is where it gets really scary. The book gives a few ways, but let's start with national security. The Equifax breach in 2017. A huge credit agency. Hackers stole the personal data of 147 million Americans. Later, the U.S. Department of Justice indicted 4 members of the Chinese military for it.
And the question is, why would a foreign military want the credit scores and social security numbers of millions of regular people? The book suggests a few reasons. 1. To find and recruit spies. If you know someone has huge debts, you can offer them money. If you know their secrets, you can blackmail them. It's a recruitment database. 2. To train their own AI algorithms on non-Chinese populations. And 3. Simple disinformation campaigns.
And it's not even always illegal hacking, right? The book mentions that fitness app, Strava.
Yes! Oh my gosh, this is wild. So Strava published a heat map of all its users' running routes. Just this beautiful, glowing map of the world. But analysts realized that in places like Afghanistan or Syria, these glowing running loops were appearing in the middle of nowhere, outlining the exact location of secret military bases. And you could even potentially identify the soldiers running there, a massive security threat. And the data wasn't stolen. It was just published.
That's insane. What about the threat to democracy? We've all heard of Cambridge Analytica, but how did that actually work?
It's about fracturing the public square. In the old days, a political ad ran on TV. Everyone saw the same ad. You could debate it, fact-check it. With micro-targeting, they use your data, your likes, your personality profile to show you a custom-made ad. They might show a pro-gun ad to one person and an ad about environmental protection to their neighbor, all from the same candidate. It creates these parallel, individual realities.
Right. So there's no common ground for debate. The book talks about an experiment with, quote, dark ads, where researchers targeted people based on their authoritarian tendencies. An ad supporting mass surveillance worked 20 times better when it was framed with, "They fought for your freedom, don't give it away," for one group, versus, "Crime doesn't stop where the internet starts," for the other. It's about pushing emotional buttons, not making rational arguments.
And while the effect on any one person might be small, the scale is the issue. Facebook did a study in 2010 where just showing people pictures of their friends who had voted increased turnout by an estimated 340,000 votes. Trump's 2016 win came down to about 70,000 votes in 3 states. 340,000 is more than enough to swing a major election. The potential for gerrymandering democracy is significant.
Okay, but the last example in the chapter, the one about World War II, that one really stopped me in my tracks.
It's just devastating. It compares the Netherlands and France during the Nazi occupation. In the Netherlands, they had this meticulous, state-of-the-art population registry system using IBM Hollerith machines. Basically, early computers. They prided themselves on tracking everyone from cradle to grave. When the Nazis invaded, they just had to grab these records. They stamped a J on the ID cards of Jews. It was a death sentence in their pockets.
The result was that 73% of Dutch Jews were killed, the highest death rate in occupied Europe.
But in France, they had historically avoided collecting data on religion for privacy reasons. So when the Nazis demanded lists of Jews, the French officials could honestly say they didn't have them. The man in charge, René Carmille, was a data enthusiast, but he was also secretly part of the French resistance. He pretended to help the Nazis, collected the data, but then he just never punched the holes in the cards for question 11, the one asking about religion. He never tabulated the data. He used his machines to create fake IDs for the resistance instead.
Wow. He sabotaged the data.
He sabotaged the data. And he saved hundreds of thousands of lives. The death rate for Jews in France was 25%. The book makes the case that the difference was data. Privacy, or the lack of it, was the difference between life and death on a massive scale. Carmille was eventually caught and died in Dachau, a true hero.
It is the ultimate and most chilling illustration of the chapter's thesis. Data isn't neutral. A system designed for bureaucratic efficiency, like the Dutch registry, became a tool for mass murder. The absence of that system in France became a shield. It proves that collecting data just in case is an incredibly dangerous gamble, because you never know whose hands it will end up in.
That is an incredibly powerful story. Okay, let's take a few questions from our listeners. First one is from Leo in Toronto. He asks, "You're saying all this data is toxic, but I get free services like Google and Facebook. Isn't that a fair trade, Ethan?"
It's a question of informed consent. Is it a fair trade if the full terms are hidden in a 50-page document and the potential consequences include identity theft, political manipulation, and, as we've seen, enabling genocide? The price isn't $0. The price is systemic risk. We're paying with the stability of our society, not our wallets. The term free is perhaps the most successful piece of marketing in the last 20 years.
Well put. Next question is from Maya in London. What's really the difference between this micro-targeting and regular advertising? Don't companies always try to persuade people? Sarah?
That's a great question, and the key difference is the public square. Like Ethan said earlier, when a billboard goes up, everyone sees it. We can discuss it, mock it, analyze it. It's public. Micro-targeted ads are, quote, dark ads. Only you see them. It allows a politician to present completely contradictory images to different groups of people, breaking down any shared reality we might have. It's the difference between a public debate and whispering a tailored, manipulative message into millions of individual ears.
Okay, last question. This is from Ben in Sydney. The World War II example is terrifying, but that was an extreme situation with Nazis. Is it really relevant today?
It's more relevant than ever. The principle is what matters. Data can be weaponized by powerful actors against vulnerable populations. The Nazis had paper records and punch cards. Imagine a modern authoritarian regime getting its hands on the data troves of Google or TikTok. They wouldn't just know your religion. They'd know your psychological weaknesses, your social network, your real-time location. The book says it could be the beginning of an, quote, undefeatable regime. The past isn't a blueprint, but it's a stark warning.
A very stark warning. So Sarah, to wrap it all up, what are the key takeaways from toxic data?
I think there are three big ones. First, we need to start thinking of personal data like a toxic substance, like asbestos or nuclear waste. It's useful, but inherently dangerous. Second, the danger isn't just about individual embarrassment. It's a systemic risk to our companies, our national security, and the very foundations of democracy. And third, and most importantly, we have to learn from the past. The Dutch collected too much data and couldn't delete it when it became toxic. We are doing the exact same thing, but on a global, digital scale. We need to change course before it's too late.
Incredible. Thank you both so much. That was a lot to think about in the best way possible. That's all the time we have for this episode of Penplexity. We want to know what you want us to talk about next. What book chapter has bent your brain recently? Let us know. You can find us on all social media platforms at Penplexity and on our website, penplexity.com. Until next time, keep reading and keep thinking. Hello, and welcome back to Penplexity, the podcast where we get tangled up in the best ideas from the best books. I'm your host, James, and with me, as always, are the sharp and insightful Sarah and Ethan.
Hey everyone! So excited to be here.
Hello, ready to deconstruct.
Excellent. Today we're jumping into a chapter that does not pull its punches. It's chapter 5 from Privacy is Power by Carissa Veliz, and it's called Pulling the Plug, which sounds pretty final.
Oh, it's meant to be. Veliz is basically saying, okay, game over. This whole experiment of the surveillance economy, trading our personal data for services, it's gone way too far. She argues it's just not compatible with a free, stable, democratic society. We have to stop the trade in personal data, now.
And what's fascinating is how she frames it. It's not presented as some radical, impossible dream. She compares it to historical shifts that seemed outlandish at the time, like establishing workers' rights, or her main analogy, the effort to save the ozone layer.
The ozone layer. Okay, I'm intrigued. That feels hopeful. How does she connect our privacy to a hole in the sky?
It's such a brilliant analogy, really. Scientists found this massive, scary problem. CFCs were destroying the ozone layer. And what did we do? We didn't just shrug. The world came together, signed the Montreal Protocol, industry innovated and found alternatives, and it's working. The ozone layer is healing. Her point is so powerful. If we can coordinate on a global scale to save the literal atmosphere, we can absolutely do it to save our privacy.
The underlying message being that regulation, driven by public pressure, is the only way. Politicians, she argues, are just waiting for our cue. If we show them we care, if we make it a voting issue, they will act.
So this chapter is basically a list of demands for our politicians? A roadmap for pulling this plug?
Exactly. And the very first thing she wants to unplug is personalized advertising.
She calls it the origin of the dark sides of the data economy. And her solution is drastic. Ban it. Completely. Not just political ads, because that line is impossible to draw, but all personalized behavioral ads.
Whoa, hold on. Ban all of it? But I kind of like that I see ads for things I might actually buy. I don't want to go back to seeing ads for, tractors all day.
Ha! The classic tractor argument. And that's exactly the myth Veliz wants to bust. She talks about this thing called real-time bidding. The moment a web page loads, your personal data, and we're talking really sensitive stuff, like your location, maybe your sexual orientation, your political leanings, gets blasted out to hundreds, maybe thousands, of companies who bid against each other to show you an ad. It happens in the blink of an eye, and we never consented to it.
And here's the truly absurd part. It barely even works for the advertisers. She cites research showing it might only increase revenues by around 4%. A minuscule amount. The New York Times even stopped using behavioral ad targeting, and their ad revenue went up. So we're sacrificing our most intimate data for basically nothing. It's smoke and mirrors.
Okay, so it's creepy, it's invasive, and it's not even that effective for selling shoes. But it is effective for swaying elections. That's the real danger she's pointing to.
That is the absolute core of the danger. A 4% bump in shoe sales is a rounding error. A 4% swing in voters that decides who runs the country.
Yikes. Okay, so first we pull the plug on personalized ads. What's next on this hit list?
Stop all trade in personal data. Full stop. She argues it should be like votes or human organs or people, just not for sale. She calls data brokers the scavengers of the digital landscape and gives these horrifying examples, like a stalker buying a woman's information from a data broker and then murdering her.
Which logically leads to one of her most compelling proposals, implementing fiduciary duties for data handlers.
Fiduciary duties? That's like for a financial advisor, right? Someone who has to act in your best interest?
Precisely. The relationship between us and big tech is one of massive asymmetry. They have all the power, all the knowledge. A fiduciary duty would legally bind them to act in our best interest, to put our privacy and well-being above their own profits or their shareholders' interests.
Wow, that alone would change everything. That's a really powerful idea. And speaking of creating new realities and building better things, this feels like the perfect time to talk about our sponsor, Mages Institute in Singapore. This whole chapter is about rethinking and redesigning our digital world to be more ethical and human-centric. Mages is right at the heart of that, training the next generation of creators who will literally build that new world. They offer incredible diploma and professional certificate programs in game design, game art, concept art, the very skills that shape our digital lives.
It's such a great fit for today's topic. I mean, if we're going to build a better internet, we need people who are not just technically skilled, but also have a strong creative and ethical foundation. It's so cool that Mages provides that kind of hands-on, practical education to help people succeed in these fields.
I agree. The chapter emphasizes designing technology with privacy and security baked in from the start. That begins with education. So for any of our listeners passionate about creating games or art or new digital worlds and who want to be part of the solution, you should definitely check them out.
That's Mages Institute in Singapore. Find out more at their website, mages.edu.sg. That's mages.edu.s-g. Go learn how to build a better future. Okay, so we're back. We've banned ad tech, stopped the data trade, and companies now have a duty of care to us. Veliz also talks about just deleting data. My inner pack rat is having a panic attack.
I know the feeling, but she makes such a good case that forgetting is a virtue. She tells the story of a woman who remembers every single detail of her life, and it's a curse. It makes her miserable. Forgetting gives people and societies second chances. Right now, technology remembers everything by default. Veliz says we need to build in expiry dates to make forgetting the new default.
And that ties directly into curbing government surveillance. The more data that's just lying around forever, the greater the incentive for governments to perform mass surveillance. She's adamant that surveillance must be targeted, it must require a warrant, and it must be proportionate. No more scooping up everything on everyone.
This is a complete teardown. It feels huge. But what about the big counterargument? That we need all this personal data for progress, for AI, for better medicine?
She tackles that head on, and her answer is a resounding no. For AI, she brings up AlphaZero, the program that mastered the game Go. It became the best in the world, not by studying millions of human games, but by playing against itself. It achieved superhuman intelligence with zero personal data.
And her take on medicine is equally skeptical of the hype. She points to the expensive failure of IBM's Watson in cancer treatment. And then she highlights a true breakthrough, an AI that discovered a new class of antibiotic, not by analyzing patient data, but by analyzing the chemical structures of molecules. We can have incredible innovation without making our private medical histories a commodity.
It just keeps coming back to the same thing, doesn't it? The trade in our personal lives isn't what's driving true progress.
Exactly. And she wraps it all up with this really potent warning about crises. How governments and corporations use moments of fear, like the pandemic, to rush in new surveillance tools, like contact tracing apps that might not even work very well, that never go away once the crisis is over.
Just incredible stuff. Let's take a few questions from our listeners. First one's from Alex, who asks, is the author saying all advertising is evil, or just a certain type?
That's a fantastic question. No, she's not against all advertising. She actually talks about the legendary ad man David Ogilvy. She's in favor of ads that are informative, ads that are creative, witty, charming, ads that give you a recipe or a useful tip. The kind she wants to ban is the surveillance-based, micro-targeted, follow-you-around-the-internet kind.
Got it. Next up, a question from Chloe. The idea of fiduciary duty sounds amazing, but how is it realistic? Wouldn't powerful companies just find a loophole?
A very practical question. It's only realistic if it has teeth. Veliz's argument implies that the penalties for violating that duty have to be so astronomical that it becomes cheaper for the company to protect your data than to pay the fine. You have to align the financial incentives of the shareholders with the ethical duty to the users. You make doing the right thing the most profitable thing.
You make it cheaper to be good. I like that. Okay, last question is from Ben. Deleting data is a nice idea, but what about history? Aren't we at risk of just erasing our past?
Another great point. Veliz is very clear on this. She is not talking about burning digital libraries or deleting public records. The focus is on personal data, And even then, she says we can make exceptions for things of true historical value, but they should be kept under lock and key, like literally inaccessible for 100 years. The goal is to change the default from keep everything forever to delete unless there's a compelling reason not to.
This has been so enlightening. Ethan, could you try to wrap this all up for us? What are the key takeaways from pulling the plug?
Of course. I see 3 core pillars. First, the surveillance economy as it exists is a failed, dangerous experiment that is toxic to democracy, and we need to end it. Second, this is not impossible. We have a precedent, the ozone layer, which proves that collective global action driven by public demand can solve massive problems. And third, she provides a detailed, actionable roadmap to do it. Ban the data trade, implement fiduciary duties, improve cybersecurity, and fundamentally change our entire approach from data hoarding to data protection. It's a call for a complete system reboot, not just minor tweaks.
A system reboot. A powerful way to put it. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ethan. What a chapter. So what should we get perplexed by next? Let us know. Find us on the socials at Penplexity or on our website, penplexity.com. Until next time. Welcome back to Penplexity, the podcast where we get, well, perplexed by books. I'm your host, James, and as always, I'm joined by the dream team. We have the brilliant and always relatable Sarah.
Hello, everyone. So excited to be here.
And the man who can find a scientific principle in a bowl of cereal, the one and only Ethan.
Cereal is a masterclass in fluid dynamics and granular physics, James. But hello, happy to be here.
Of course it is. Laughs. Today, we are diving into the final chapter of Privacy is Power by Carissa Veliz. It's chapter 6, titled What You Can Do. And thank goodness for it, because after the last few chapters, I was ready to go live in a cave. This chapter is all about actionable steps, which I think we all desperately need.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to feel completely powerless, like this whole surveillance machine is just too big. But Veliz starts with this really hopeful concept from Buddhist philosophy, impermanence.
Impermanence. Okay, that sounds a little fleeting, like my motivation to go to the gym.
Laughs. A bit. But the idea is that nothing is fixed. The world can change dramatically, for better or for worse. She uses the 2020 pandemic as an example. Life seemed normal, and then boom, everything changed in weeks. That same power for rapid change can be harnessed for good. We can make things better.
And she draws a fantastic parallel to the history of rights. Think about labor rights. There was always an economic incentive to, exploit workers. It was profitable. But society eventually drew a line. We decided that human beings are not resources to be endlessly mined. We established that things like a safe workplace and weekends are non-negotiable human rights.
So the argument is, we need to do the same for our data? Draw a red line and say, nope, you can't have this, it's not for sale.
Precisely. If capitalism is to be, as she says, inhabitable, it has to have limits. Profitability can't be the only metric when it comes to fundamental rights. The system depends on our cooperation. And I think that's the core message here. When people stop cooperating, the system breaks.
Okay, so let's get into the how. How do we stop cooperating? I feel like I need a manual. I'm ready to be a digital rebel.
Well, she gives us one. And it starts with the person in the mirror. The first tip is simple. Think twice before sharing. We're so used to these platforms feeling like our living rooms, but they're not. They're stadiums where corporations and governments are watching.
I'm guilty of this. Holiday photos, pictures of my lunch, the usual.
And it's wild what can be gleaned from that. She mentions that fingerprints can be read and cloned from high-resolution photos where you can see someone's hands. Suddenly, that peace sign you're flashing in a picture isn't so innocuous.
Wow. Okay. No more hand photos. Got it.
It extends to other people, too. The book talks about privacy etiquette, like, ask for consent before you post a photo of a friend. And this was a big one for me. Warn guests if you have smart devices in your home. Even Google's own hardware chief admitted he'd never thought about it until he was asked. It's just not on the designer's radar.
Which is in itself a profoundly damning statement about the industry. The obliviousness is either feigned or unforgivable. And the point about children's privacy is critical. A child can't consent to having their entire life documented online. When they're old enough to understand, they might feel, as one person in the book did, utterly embarrassed and deeply betrayed.
That's heavy. And it makes perfect sense. Their story isn't ours to tell. What about those DNA tests? They always seem like a fun, harmless gift.
Super not harmless, according to Veliz. They're wildly inaccurate, for one. But more importantly, you're not just giving away your own genetic privacy, you're giving away data about your parents, your siblings, your children, and relatives you haven't even met, for generations to come. It's a huge collective data giveaway.
Okay, that's a hard no on the DNA kit. I was thinking of getting my dad for his birthday. So we're being more mindful. We're asking for consent. What's next?
Create privacy spaces. I love this idea. Have a party and ask people not to post photos online. Create a zone of trust. And just say no. It feels awkward, right? When a website pops up a cookie banner, the path of least resistance is to just click Accept All.
They design it that way. It's a dark pattern. The Reject All button is often hidden, or it forces you into a labyrinth of toggles. It's intentionally frustrating. The book's advice to just close the website if it's too annoying is a small act of rebellion. Your attention is the currency. Deny it to them.
I like that. Vote with your clicks, or your lack of clicks. Now the book gets into a whole list of tools and alternatives. This is the real meat and potatoes, isn't it?
It is. And it's so practical. Choose dumb devices over smart ones. Do you really need a kettle that connects to the internet? Because anything that connects to the internet can be hacked. She has a great line about smart assistants. Like Alexa, if you disconnect it, they make great paperweights.
Laughs. My Alexa is sweating right now. What about our phones? I feel like my phone is the biggest spy of all.
It likely is. The book points out that it's probably a good idea to stay clear of Androids unless you're a tech expert who can lock them down, due to the sheer volume of insecure, pre-installed apps. And it's not just the device, but the apps on it. For messaging, she recommends Signal over WhatsApp. Even though WhatsApp is encrypted, it's owned by Facebook, and the co-founder himself said, "I sold my users privacy."
Signal is great. I love the disappearing messages feature. It's like having a real conversation that doesn't live forever on some server. And for search engines, switch your default from Google to something like DuckDuckGo. Your searches are a window into your mind. You don't want Google staring through it 24/7.
This feels like a digital detox plan. New browser, new email, new search engine.
And it's less daunting than it sounds. Use different browsers for different things. Brave is a good one that blocks trackers automatically. Use privacy extensions, like Privacy Badger. The key takeaway isn't specific brand names, which change, but the principles. Look for encryption. Look for business models that don't rely on selling your data. Look for ways to compartmentalize your digital life.
And for the truly hardcore, there's Tor.
Tor. It's essentially a system of digital secret tunnels. Your request to a website gets bounced between a network of volunteer computers around the world, so the website doesn't know it's you, and your internet provider doesn't know what website you're visiting. Yes, it's slower, and yes, some agencies might take note that you're using it, but the more ordinary people use it for ordinary privacy, the safer it becomes for everyone, including the activists and journalists who truly depend on it.
That's a really good point. It's about normalizing privacy. You know, speaking of people who are building these new digital worlds, this chapter has a big section for people who work in tech. It reminds me of our fantastic sponsor. This episode of Penplexity is brought to you by Mages Institute in Singapore. Mages is a leading institution for creative media education, offering incredible diploma and professional certificate programs in fields like game design, game art, and concept art. And it connects so well with what we're talking about today. The book calls on tech designers and programmers to build ethics and privacy into their products from the start.
That's so true. Imagine a generation of game designers and digital artists graduating from a place like Mages, who have this kind of ethical framework, who are thinking about user data, and creating digital spaces that are fun and respectful. That's how we change things from the ground up.
Exactly. Instead of bolting on privacy as an afterthought, it's part of the core design. That's a powerful idea. If you're passionate about these creative fields and want a career-oriented education, you should really check them out.
You absolutely should. Visit their website at mages.edu.sg to learn more. That's mages.edu.sg. A big thank you to Mages Institute for their support. All right, we are back. We've talked tools, we've talked philosophy. What about just demanding our rights? The book says we should actually contact data brokers.
Yes! And she warns you it's an ordeal. They make it difficult on purpose. But just making the request matters. It creates a paper trail. It costs them time and money. And it sends a clear signal to them and to policymakers that we do not consent to this.
There's a really powerful section in there for people who actually work in tech. It mentions Edwin Black's book, IBM and the Holocaust, which details how IBM's punch card technology was used to facilitate the Nazi genocide. It's a chilling reminder that technology is never neutral, and the tools being built today are infinitely more powerful than a punch card.
Wow, that really puts things in perspective. It's not just about annoying ads, it's about the architecture of control.
It is, and the chapter ends with this powerful call to action: refuse the unacceptable. Our heroes, from Martin Luther King to Nelson Mandela, are people who saw an unjust world and refused to accept it. Veliz argues that indifference and resignation are not the appropriate responses to having your rights violated. Moral indignation is.
Wow. Okay, I feel fired up. I'm ready to change my settings and write some angry emails. And on that note, let's take a few questions from our listeners. First one is from Alex in London. Alex asks, "This all sounds great, but it's also a lot of work. I have a job, a family. I don't have time to become a privacy expert. If I can only do one thing, what's the most impactful?" Sarah.
That's such a valid question, Alex. It can feel overwhelming. Veliz herself says, you don't have to be perfect, just do your best. If I had to pick one thing from the book's list, I'd say change your default search engine to a private one, like DuckDuckGo. It takes 30 seconds to do on your browser and your phone, and it stops one of the biggest data vacuums in its tracks. It's a small change with a huge impact on the data you leak every single day.
Great advice. Next up, a question from Maya in Berlin. You mentioned Tor can attract the attention of intelligence agencies. Doesn't that make you more of a target and defeat the purpose of trying to be private? Ethan, this feels like one for you.
An excellent and logical question, Maya. It's the privacy paradox. The short answer is potentially yes in the short term, but the long-term strategic answer is no. As I mentioned before, the more normal people who are not journalists or dissidents, people who just want to stop their ISP from selling their browsing history, use these tools, the more the suspicious signal is diluted. It's an act of collective digital hygiene. By using it, you're not just protecting yourself, you're providing cover for those who need it most. You're helping to normalize privacy, which is the ultimate goal.
It's like digital herd immunity. I love it. Okay, last question is from Ben in California. The chapter talks about respecting children's privacy, which I agree with. But as a parent, I'm also terrified about online dangers. How do I balance respecting their privacy with my duty to keep them safe?
Oh, Ben, that is the million-dollar question for modern parents. The book doesn't offer a simple answer, but the spirit of it suggests moving away from a model of pure surveillance and towards a model of trust and education. Instead of just tracking their every move, which can backfire, the focus should be on teaching them digital literacy. Talk to them about the risks. Create an environment where they feel safe coming to you if they see something scary or make a mistake. And set boundaries collaboratively. It's harder than just installing spyware, for sure, but it builds a foundation of trust that's far more protective in the long run.
Fantastic questions and fantastic answers. Thank you, team. So, as we wrap up this journey through Privacy is Power, I have to ask, what's the final key takeaway? Ethan, can you summarize it for us?
I think it boils down to two interconnected ideas. One, this entire system of surveillance capitalism, this massive, intimidating machine, depends entirely on our individual and collective cooperation. It needs our clicks, our data, our attention, and our quiet assent. And two, we can choose to stop cooperating. It's not about achieving perfect, infallible privacy. It's about doing our best, choosing the alternative, demanding our rights, and as Veliz says, refusing the unacceptable. We are not powerless. We just need to remember that.
We are not powerless. I love that. A perfect, powerful note to end on. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Ethan, for another mind-bending conversation.
Thanks, James. It was a great one.
Anytime.
And thank you all for listening to Penplexity. What book or topic should we get perplexed by next? Let us know. You can find us on all the socials at Penplexity and on our website at penplexity.com. Until next time, stay curious. Hello, and welcome back to Penplexity, the show that gets tangled up in the best ideas from the world of books. I'm your host, James, and as always, I am joined by the brilliant duo of Sarah and Ethan. How are you both doing?
Hey, James. Doing great. Ready to get perplexed.
Hello. I've had my requisite 2 cups of coffee. I am therefore prepared for a state of optimal cognitive function.
Excellent. Well, today we are diving into a really potent piece of writing. It's the conclusion of the book, Privacy is Power by Carissa Veliz. And honestly, it reads less like a conclusion and more like a manifesto, a call to arms for the digital age. It basically lays out 2 paths for humanity, 2 worlds. One is, well, pretty terrifying.
Oh, it's absolutely terrifying. She paints this picture that's basically a more extreme version of where we are now. Imagine a world where everything you do, every single step you take, every word you say, every idle thought you type into a search bar is recorded, analyzed, and shared. Not just with companies, but with governments.
And it's not just what you do, right? She talks about under-the-skin surveillance.
Exactly. It's wild. Your watch, which you might be forced to wear by law, is tracking your heart rate, your sweat, to figure out how you're feeling. Imagine watching the news, and some company is logging that you got angry, and then sharing that with the authorities. It's just so invasive.
The truly insidious part of this dystopia isn't merely the observation, it's the preemption. Veliz describes a world where your data is used to make predictions about you, and those predictions dictate your life. Whether you get a loan, a job, even an organ transplant, it's not up to you or other people anymore. It's up to a predictive algorithm.
So machines are literally managing you. She says they'll order your groceries to keep you productive and time your toilet breaks at work. I mean, who wants that?
No one. And think about the kids. That part really got me. You worry that them just playing a game online could ruin their future because their scores are sold to data brokers to calculate their, quote, cognitive capacities. Or they make one silly teenage mistake, post one dumb photo, and they can't get a job. Ever. She says you worry they'll never taste freedom. That's a heavy line.
It is. Because a society that eliminates the possibility of error, of spontaneity, of privacy, is, as Veliz states, primed for an authoritarian takeover. The infrastructure of control is built under the guise of convenience and safety, but its potential for misuse is almost limitless.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. The book does say that the authorities claim this is all to prevent pandemics and terrorist attacks. Isn't there a case to be made for that trade-off? A little less privacy for a lot more safety.
That's the sales pitch, isn't it? But it's a trap. Veliz points out that the data is, quote, for much more than that. It's the classic slippery slope. You give them an inch, they take a digital mile. And that safety is an illusion if the system itself is what's making your life more precarious.
The premise of the trade-off is also fundamentally flawed. It exchanges a fundamental right, privacy, for a conditional promise of security. A promise that can be revoked or redefined at any time by whoever is in power. True security in a democracy stems from the protection of rights, not their erosion.
All right, you've convinced me. That future is bleak. So, please, let's talk about the other path. The better world she describes. What does that look like, Sarah?
Okay, deep breath. The good place. It's a world where what's yours is actually yours. The data on your phone stays on your phone. No one can share it or sell it. You can go to a doctor, or talk to a lawyer, or just have a weird, rambling conversation with a friend without worrying who's listening or how it might be used against you later. You can make mistakes. You can be curious. It's a world where the government's power comes from our consent, not our data.
And this doesn't mean we have to abandon technology. This is a key point. Veliz is not a Luddite. She advocates for good tech.
Yes, good tech. Tech that's designed to help you, the user, achieve your own goals. Not the goals of some advertiser or data broker. Tech that tells you what it's doing, no sneaky fine print. You're the customer, not the product.
Speaking of building good tech and designing better futures, this feels like the perfect moment to thank our sponsor. This episode of Penplexity is brought to you by the Mages Institute in Singapore. Mages Institute is a leading institution for creative media education, offering industry-focused diploma and professional certificate programs in areas like game design, game art, concept art, and more. We're committed to providing students with hands-on training, expert instructors, and strong industry connections to prepare them for successful careers in these exciting fields. We're hoping to reach listeners who are passionate about these industries and looking for a practical, career-oriented education to help them break in or advance their skills. Our website is mages.edu.sg, and we'd love for listeners to visit and learn more.
That is such a good fit for today's topic. Seriously. If you're listening and feeling fired up about building the quote tech Veliz is talking about, places like Mages are where you get the skills to actually do it, to build the better, more private, more fun digital worlds. So yeah, definitely check them out.
Indeed, a society needs its architects. For the digital world, those architects are designers and developers. A practical education is the first step toward building ethically. Again, that's mages.edu.sg.
All right, and we're back. So, we've got these two futures, the terrifying one and the hopeful one. The author, Carissa Veliz, seems surprisingly optimistic that we can get to the good one. Ethan, what do you make of her optimism? Is it warranted?
It is a measured, evidence-based optimism. She recounts how, just 6 years ago, telling people she researched privacy was met with cynicism, with people saying privacy is dead. Now, post-Cambridge Analytica and other scandals, it's a mainstream concern. That cultural shift is significant.
Yeah, and she talks about GDPR, the big European data law. For all its flaws, she says it's a major step. It proved that regulating this stuff is actually possible. It's like how we eventually decided food needed safety standards, or that cars needed seatbelts. We're in that moment now for data. It's a civilizing process for the internet.
The Wild West of the internet. Finally getting a sheriff. I like that. Okay, let's take a few questions from our listeners. First one here is from Alex in London, who asks, isn't some level of surveillance necessary for a modern society to function, especially with online threats? Sarah?
That's a great question, Alex. I think Veliz would say it's about scale and principle. The problem isn't targeted security. It's widespread surveillance that operates on the assumption that everyone is a potential criminal. Her solution is to blind the system, so it has to treat us impartially and fairly. It's about having accountable security that respects rights, not a giant dragnet.
Makes sense. Okay, next question is from Priya in Mumbai. The good tech future sounds great, but it feels unrealistic. How can we, as individuals, actually fight back against massive corporations and governments? Ethan, you take this one.
Priya, it's a question of agency. Veliz's argument is that we reclaim agency in two ways. Individually, by making conscious choices, refusing the unacceptable, choosing services that value privacy. But more powerfully, we act collectively. We demand better laws. We support politicians and groups that champion these issues. The GDPR didn't materialize from corporate goodwill. It was the result of sustained public and political pressure. We must transition our thinking from being a user to being a citizen.
From user to citizen. I love that. Okay, final question is from Ben in Chicago. The chapter mentions being worried about kids. What's the single biggest risk for them in this surveillance world?
Oh, Ben. For me, it's the loss of the right to grow up. It's the permanence of it all. Making a dumb mistake shouldn't be a life sentence. But in a world of total surveillance, it can be. It robs children of the space to be messy, to figure things out, to be young, without a permanent, unchangeable record being held against them. It's the theft of their future freedom before they've even had a chance to understand what it is.
Wow, that's a lot to process. So as we wrap up, Ethan, could you try and summarize the core takeaways from this chapter for us?
Of course. 3 points. First, we stand at a crucial crossroads, with a choice between a future of pervasive surveillance and one where privacy is a protected right. Second, privacy is not the enemy of progress. Rather, good technology requires privacy to truly serve human values and autonomy. And third, this is not a lost cause. The fight for privacy is a vital, ongoing, quote, civilizing process, and it is winnable through our collective awareness and action. As Veliz says, you are not for sale.
Brilliantly summarized. You are not for sale. I think that's the perfect note to end on. And that is all the time we have for this episode of Penplexity. Thank you so much, Sarah and Ethan.
Thanks, James. That was a great one.
A pleasure.
So what should we get perplexed by next? Send us your book and chapter suggestions on all our social media platforms at Penplexity. And you can find more about today's episode on our website, penplexity.com. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep reading.